Hi, friends. My name's Mary Aaronworth. I'm Senior Deputy Director at the Reading and Writing Project at Columbia University. And I want to just talk to you a little bit today about girls and science. First, I want to share some research with you, and then I would love to help you by just giving 3 things that we could be doing with our girls of actually any age to help them engage with science more and to see the possibility of a role for them in science, which could be anything from being a citizen science who's like, they're engaged, they'll vote, they'll be informed, they care about science, to being an active scientist, to being someone who loves science books and reads them for pleasure and is engaged in like curiosity around the world. So it could be a variety of roles, but I'd love to help you by thinking about ways that we can collect books and make them available for our kids and sort of highlight them so our kids want to read them and engage with them. Books and also like YouTube videos and channels that we think kids might watch. 2 would be thinking a little bit about role models and mentors and just how we talk about those and highlight them for our children. And then 3 will be thinking about just options for like one day or summer camps. All right, so first I'm going to share some research with you. So let's just take a look for a minute at the kind of statistics. I mean, you can get these pretty easily online, but looking at the gender pay gap, which is when men and women have the same job, but they get a same level of expertise, same level of education, same level of responsibility, but they're paid differently for it. And then the differences of weekly earnings for women with and without children, so that men who have children get paid more and women who have children get paid less in the workplace. I mean, there's just things that are just not fair. There is great inequity, and there is still a huge amount of sexism. And it's definitely true that this is related to how young women move their way through the sciences. So you can see here college majors with the highest and the lowest earning, and then how they're sorted by gender. So we've got lots and lots and lots of young women who go on in science in high school, but not graduating college in those majors. And we want to make sure that that's different. We want to make sure that our girls can see a possibility for themselves in science. So that's the thing that we really want. And a lot of this work can start when they're really young. Like when you look at why people go into careers, sometimes it's because they saw books or they watched videos or they saw films where they saw themselves in those roles. And this is going to be particularly true for young girls of color. Like it's just not okay how there is still a huge racial inequity between young girls of color achieving positions in science. And we want to make sure that the kids who are in your homes can break through these barriers. So listen, I'm going to help you with just 3 things that might make a difference. So number 1 is going to be thinking about from the public library, sometimes from the bookstore, wherever you happen to be, the library will have tons of these, is just collecting engaging nonfiction books that are science-based and then leaving them on the table or leaving them in the back of the car. Like with my stepdaughter, when I would ask her if she wanted to get some science books at the library, she would always say no. And then I would just quietly get these books on butterflies and I would leave them on the kitchen table. And then the next thing you know, I come down and she's having breakfast and she's reading them, or I would get these books. I mean, she had, different interests. She went from butterflies to, I can't remember, oddly like snails. She became really interested in snails. So I would just get these books on snails and leave them around. So let me just show you for a second. I'm going to show you just a few books that might be interesting to think about. It's not these books so much themselves as the notion of what books can look like. So for instance, like Bat Loves the Night. When you open up a book like this, I mean, it's just so beautiful. Like children's nonfiction has really changed. And so if your kids are young, you could be reading to this to your child. Bat is waking upside down as usual, hanging by her toenails. And then you pause and you're like, wow, I didn't know that bats hung upside down by their toenails. Isn't that amazing? Her beady eyes open, her pixie ears twitch. She shakes her thistledown fur. She unfurls her wings. Wow, look at this, that are made of a skin so fine the finger bones inside show through. And you can see, look at that. Oh my gosh, look how fine the wings are. Gosh, next time we go to the zoo, we have to look at some of the bats. Or maybe we should look at a video. Let's get a YouTube video and go look at bats for a minute. So see, what you can do is you can go easily from the book to a YouTube video to some kind of experience where you might be able to get to the zoo, or just, I mean, the nice thing now, even during the pandemic, is zoos all have all these webcams. You can like look online for live webcams of bats and you'll find them. And the next thing you know, You've got a kid who wasn't really interested in bats, and now they are interested in bats. And then they'll go from bats to other animals, or some like another kind of book that kids really like, especially when they're younger, but they'll be interested when they're older as well, are things like this, where it's like mosquito bite, and it's just, it's kind of gross. There's something about that. But look at these amazing science diagrams inside. Here's the egg case, and then here's the blow up of it. And so now what they're doing is they're actually, without you having even to use the words, they're looking at annotated diagrams. And the truth is that if you leave books like this around, I mean, I started doing this for both my kids. And when they were 5 and 6, I'd bring them home and I'd just like, oh my gosh, do you want to read this? But then when they were 12 and 13, I would leave the same kind of books just sitting around on the table or on, I'd leave them on the couch, or my big thing was often in the car, because I don't know, for some reason, I'm constantly feeling like I had to drive my kids from place to place, especially to and from work for me. And they would just pick them up. Like, I wouldn't say anything about them. I would just have them on the back seat and they would pick them up. And the next thing you know, you've got kids who are interested in science. So that's one thing. And then if you're going to be reading books, I would also recommend that, like, take them to the Nature Channel on YouTube, or take them to National Geographic on YouTube, or just, I read the bat book and now I'm going to go to a YouTube channel on bats, and there'll be amazing things on that. And the next thing you know, you've got a kid who's, able to follow up their curiosity and their passion and begin to see that science is all around us. The world is such an amazing thing to be engaged with. So now let's look at number 2, which is this whole thing about role models. So there's a lot of research that shows that when kids see themselves in the texts that they encounter, both in school, in their home, and also in the world, then they envision more possibility for themselves. And when they don't see themselves, they don't envision possibility. And you can talk with scientists of color, and they'll often say, especially women scientists of color, they'll say that one of the things that led them to go into the sciences is they saw a female astronaut, or they saw a scientist who looked like them. So I'm just going to pause for a minute and take you to a site that will help you do this. So this site is called Skype with a Scientist, and it's amazing. You can sign up, like you could get your family together, or you could get a couple friends together, and you can do it virtually, and what you do is you get to Skype with a scientist. And let me just show you, because one thing that's super cool is you can, when you're filling out the form for who you might want to Skype with, you can say what kind of scientist. So you could be sitting there with your child and like, oh my gosh, do we want to Skype with an archaeologist? Do we want to Skype with like a physicist? Do we want to Skype with someone who's interested in bugs? Like, that would be so cool. And then what they'll also ask down here is, how old are your kids? So like, what grade are they, et cetera. But then you can also look at this. Would you particularly like to speak with a scientist whose ethnicity is East Asian or Latin American or Latinx or Native American? And so that's such a beautiful thing, because what you can do is you can help your kids just see more mentors in the world around them. Because I'm just going to play a little bit of a video for you, which is a little sobering. It's just watch it for a second.
One inventor is Benjamin Franklin.
Leonardo da Vinci.
Thomas Edison.
Alexander Bell Graham. No. It's kind of a tough one.
In school, it was always a male inventor.
Okay, so we don't want that for our kids. We want our kids to be able to see possibility. So one is this thing like Skype with a Scientist, but the other is just, every now and then when you see someone who's in the news, like play it up, show those pictures to your kids, or you can even look up famous female East Asian scientists, and you can just show them to some of our daughters, because we want them to be able to see that there's a future for themselves. And then the last tip I'll just give you as a parent now is that there are a lot of things in the summer that can make a big difference for kids engaging with science. And sometimes I think we do end up making gendered choices, or we're quick to send, I was quick to send my kids to soccer camp, but not so quick to send them to like the science museum. So there will be like, most of the science museums run these like workshops for kids that are either free or very inexpensive. They're either half a day or a day, or they'll run these 2 or 3 day science camps, or just going to one of the local science museums. That can make a really big difference for science feeling real and contemporary for our kids. So I hope this is helpful. I worry about it all the time. I worry about all kids in science, but I especially worry about girls in science, and I triply worry about girls of color in science, and really wanting to move heaven and earth to help our children and your children and all the children feel like there's possibility for them in this, because they will contribute. These are some of the going to be the great minds of their generation, and the world needs them. Okay, thank you.